welcome back to the Whatnauts review show number 302. My name is Kyle Springer. I'm joined by Melissa Wilkinson. Melissa, how's your weekend been so far?
It's been busy. I get on a plane tomorrow. This time tomorrow, I will be in Orlando, Florida. So I'm just rushing around trying to get things ready. I have a suitcase because I've not flown in over 10 years. And I borrowed a suitcase from my brother and sister-in-law that they said can be carried on. But it's got this like weird handle at the top of it that's like semi-soft, semi-rigid. It's like one metal bar that's like covered in fabric. And like you can sort of like squash this thing against the top of the suitcase. But when unsquashed, it is technically over the size of a carry-on.
They won't disqualify you for being like a centimeter longer than the actual size.
I'm very worried now. I'm like, I might go and just buy a hardcover suitcase at like a Kohl's or a TJ Maxx or something today so that I know it has definitive properties.
Right.
Like moisture, humidity, sagging, gravity. Nothing can affect the size and shape of this thing. It's not quantum. It will always fit in the carry-on box.
Yeah. I mean, it's potentially a smart thing to have down the road, but also how much traveling are you going to do? Like, that's also one of the questions of like, do I buy this and just have it for the off chance I need it? Or
who knows?
Yeah. Who knows indeed. Well, my weekend is off to a pretty good start. I went to go see Transformers 1 last night. It was a blast. I loved it.
I want to see it.
Yeah,
and I'm not a Transformers gal, but this looks like a lovely time.
Neither am I. Like, I know kind of general pop culture stuff, maybe a little bit more than most since I'm a big nerd anyways, right?
If you love Gundams, you must also have at least passing knowledge of Transformers.
Enough to know that, yes, they are not, in fact, Gundams. But yeah, it was a blast. I had a great time with that. Also, on our previous episode of the Captain's Log, our most recent one of that, I tried our Coca-Cola flavored Oreos, which I have the bag here with me right now as a reference, because I have also found the Oreo flavored Coca-Cola.
And how was that experience? Have you opened it yet?
I have not yet. I have it here for this show. Right here,
wow,
right
not
now.
Even saving it for the Captain's Log. This is part of our Zodiac episode that you do this.
A real mystery. No, I have something else for the Captain's Log next week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, the Mountain Dew mystery flavor for
oh, it's back.
For the year. Oh, yeah, it's back again. But here's
what will it taste like this year?
Flavored
Laffy
Coke.
Taffy or Sweet Tarts. Because fruit candy is all it has ever been year to year.
So I think this only comes in their zero sugar flavor. I couldn't find it in like a regular, and all the pictures I've seen also say zero sugar. But this will be interesting to see what this tastes like. Here I go.
There he goes.
Oh, wow. Yes. Yeah. That tastes like an Oreo. That's weird.
Wow. Accuracy.
That is so weird. Yeah. You get like an immediate sensation of the like chocolate cookie, and it's on the like aftertaste that you get the like cream for the filling. That's so weird. It's almost like a chocolate soda.
Huh.
Interesting. Huh. I'm baffled. I was not expecting it to be like that much, because the Oreo or the Coke flavored Oreos, I guess I could smell them, and it's like, oh, that smells like a soda. And then it was like, I guess they have like a few of those little like popping candy things in there to give you the sensation of like a fizz. But I don't know. It's fine. I guess, but yeah, that actually tastes like an Oreo.
Wow.
That's weird. Okay. Anyways, moving on, because that is not what we're here to talk about.
But a valuable mindset to be in, being
Right.
confounded, being puzzled.
Indeed. Today we are continuing Shametember, as we like to call it, where in the month of September we watch movies that have been on our list of shame for quite some time. And this could be giant pop culture pillars like, oh my God, you haven't seen Star Wars yet? Or it could be like hyper specific to the host's tastes here. So on our previous episode, Melissa, we got to watch Looney Tunes Back in Action.
Yes.
And here we are this week for Zodiac for me.
This is what started it. Is earlier this summer, you asked me, tell me how you feel about Long Legs. I'm curious, but it looks too scary.
Yeah.
And after I saw Long Legs, I told you it's more creepy than scary. It's mostly a police procedural, and I think you'll like it. And it reminded me of Zodiac, and I wanted to use that as a reference point. And then I remembered you had not seen Zodiac, which is confounding because you're such a crime guy. You love Mindhunter, also by David Fincher. And you told me once that your mom's favorite genre of movie was based on a true story.
Yes. Mostly the uplifting, heartwarming, like that was the one with Mark Wahlberg running the race and the dog that just
Arthur the King.
Yeah. She would like that stuff, not not Zodiac.
Okay.
But yes, you took all those things in your mind and you came up with the idea of what if this Shametember we assign the other person stuff that we haven't seen. So you assigned me Zodiac and I was the one that then assigned you Looney Tunes Back in Action.
Similar films hold a similar place in culture.
Oh, yeah, indeed. Baffling, confounding. So yeah, we thought that'd be a funny 1-2 punch, so to speak, as well to follow up Looney Tunes with a crime police detective story. Serial
Wish
killer
they were one
movie.
and the same. Wish that there was a serial killer going around just like turning people's mouths around to the back sides of their heads.
I know you're not online all that much, but have you seen any posts where they're like, what's name a movie, change all the characters to Muppets except for one? I wonder what the Zodiac version of this would be.
Zodiac is the only human.
Yeah, who knows? I don't know.
Jake Gyllenhaal is a Muppet to begin with. He's got
these big eyes.
Big round eyes, and he's got this like long straight nose and this wide straight mouth, and his features are just so like large and like geometric.
Yeah.
After years of looking at him, I'm like, he looks like Guy Smiley. He looks like when there's a Muppet that's supposed to be humanoid. He has those proportions.
He is the humanoid Muppet. Man, yeah. That'd be an interesting take on this film. Anyways, Zodiac. Yeah, this was my first time watching Zodiac. I loved this. I thought this was awesome. Of course. Yeah. I mean,
surprise to no one.
Yeah. I thought this was incredible. It really does feel like Mindhunter. Like this almost feels like a lost season of Mindhunter, or Mindhunter is maybe more accurately a continuation of the things he was doing in Zodiac. And yeah, it's just kind of like this eye-opening experience of like, oh, this is where it all started. I know that this is not his first movie, but in terms of that Mindhunter comparison, it was like, oh,
or
I see it.
Seven.
Right? Yeah. It's like, but I see it now. Okay, yeah,
Mhm.
cool. So yeah, I had an absolute blast. This was fascinating to see Robert Downey Jr. In this in another role, kind of right alongside when Iron Man 1 was filmed.
And I think
immediately right. I was like, oh, he still has the goatee because he's now in some scene in Thor or something, or who knows what, right? Or
when people talk about the lead up to his redemption arc in Iron Man, when they talk about he was in movies like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang right around that time, people do not mention Zodiac enough as part of the Robert Downey Jr. redemption tour.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because his character is I don't want to say he's a weirdo or that he's out there. That makes him seem like too strange. But
he's the one guy in the room wearing an ascot, and he gets drunk off of like 10 neon blue drinks.
Yeah, which was a great scene, by the way. But yeah, like he's a little more out there than the rest of them, and he is this kind of drunkard, which becomes much more apparent once later on in the film. And so yeah, to have that redemption arc where we kind of know he used to be on drugs and stuff like that. It almost feels like a character that he's playing. It's like, oh, he doesn't have to do much acting in this one. I don't know how true that is. I'm just saying stuff here.
Don't know the man personally. Just happy he's healthy.
Yeah, maybe his experience with drugs helped him play this, and I think he had a great character, right? Jake Gyllenhaal in this is fantastic as well. I saw briefly on the Wikipedia that they liked him in Donnie Darko, and so they wanted him to play the Gray Smith, that's his name, right? In this one, because he could do that naive look, but also a man possessed. Like I need to solve this puzzle here, right? That was
that is perfect. That's exactly what he gives you, naive but possessed.
Yeah, exactly. So I think he nailed it. I liked his character a lot in that too. It was a great time. Mark Ruffalo is fantastic. The rest of the cast is great.
Yeah, there's just like a deep bench of character actors just playing like detectives and reporters. It's a long movie. It's like 2:37. Oh, 2:37 on the dot. I got it. It takes place across such a long span of time.
Yeah.
It's got this central thread of trying to untangle the Zodiac mystery and various personal things alongside that. But it doesn't have a conventional plot structure. I don't want to say meanders, but it will not gloss over. It goes over a long amount of time. If there's not something happening with the Zodiac case, the movie just keeps going until it gets to something with the Zodiac case.
Right.
Do we see Robert Graysmith and Melanie get married? No, not important. When does the Zodiac killer send another letter?
Yeah, it's interesting because you were kind of hesitant to use the word gloss over, but I think it does, but only because there is so much to tell, right? There's such a big time period that this movie is covering, but it is very adept at cluing you in on the details you need to know. They don't need to show you a wedding scene or a proposal scene for you to figure out, oh, now they're married and they have kids, right? Or so on and so forth. Or this is the guy that survived that one attack here. Stuff like that. I think that was it's an interesting one for me, having watched Mindhunter and then going back to watch this. I want more details. I want more of the like, but no, tell me about your personal relationship with this girl here, or show me the home life of Robert Downey Jr.'s character before he goes to live on a boat. I don't remember the actor's name, but the guy that played Jack's dad in Lost, who is also
John
working
Terry.
at the yes, thank you. Show me more of his life. How is he involved in this here as seemingly the like head of the paper? Like, what was that like? Like, I want more of these details.
Yes.
I'm sure some of them are in the book that is based off, that this movie is based off of. But I don't know.
I think it is an asset to the film that these characters and the world they're in feel like there is a lot more that could be said, but is left unsaid. This movie is not it's takes the Zodiac case very factually. The only kills we see are the kills for which there are confirmed survivors. You know, like he goes after a couple and like the woman dies, but the man survives with injuries. Or like there's witnesses, like the kids supposedly saw him kill the cab driver. It only uses cases, it only shows us things that it can fairly factually recreate.
Right.
And so it doesn't go harder than it needs to go. Like the killings are just sparingly used enough, because factually that's all we have, that like it doesn't need a lot to have real impact. So this is not a movie that is exceptionally bloody or gory or violent or scary. This is not a jump scare movie.
Right,
it's not really a horror
jump
movie
scares
at all. But boy, is it unnerving and eerie. And one of the things that makes it so unnerving is the mystery of it all. In the larger sense of, was that the Zodiac? Is this suspect that they think they found, was that him? Was he the Zodiac killer? But also there are these sort of subplots. There's these little cul-de-sacs that the story goes into. And after it leaves that, you're like, well, what was that? What did that mean? Who was that guy?
Right?
Seemingly has nothing to, we've determined he has nothing to do with the larger Zodiac case. But what was his deal outside of that?
Yeah, it's weird.
It's a movie that'll have you awake at night, not just for the mystery on all of our minds, who is the Zodiac killer, but for all of these smaller things.
Yeah.
What's the deal with the squirrels? What's the deal with the guy who invites Jake Gyllenhaal into his basement? What does that mean? What was that?
Yeah, who was upstairs in the house there, right? Like, was it a dog? Was it another person? Who knows? I don't know. Look, I think there's a lot of the mystery that is out there that I think this movie kind of presents as small details and stuff. And so, yeah, you can leave it just kind of thinking and wondering and being like, oh, man, yeah. But that is also like, I, on one hand, like I was trying to mention earlier, like I almost feel like this could be a television show. Like this could have been a mini series instead of a movie. And it sounded like he was. It sounded like David Fincher was looking into doing an adaptation of James Ellroy's The Black Dahlia as a mini series, and that didn't work out. I also just happened to finish up a James Ellroy novel this week, but yeah,
good for you reading a novel.
Right? Yeah, thanks. But also, yeah, it's so adept at presenting you these details and these little avenues that you feel like it could have gone down or
Yes.
explored in really, really interesting ways without taking away from the movie itself.
Yes.
The movie still feels complete, which is awesome.
Yes. The potential of what's happening is not, there's no wasted potential. There's nothing that's frustrating. The unseen potential is only haunting, which I think adds to the experience. And I think it's better as a film instead of as a TV show. I did not see this in theaters when it came out when I was 17 years old.
Mhm.
Wish I would have had the the gusto to go do so at that age. Really hope I can see it in a theater at some point, that somebody will replay it, because
Yeah.
I think just sitting there for the 2 hours and 37 minutes, having to commit to this thing, being stuck there in the theater seat, you're really along for the ride. And there's a bit in the movie where, to display the passage of time between various years, between periods of activity for the Zodiac killer, the screen goes dark and you just hear like TV and radio broadcasts
Mhm.
about events, just the news, the Vietnam War, Watergate, things like that. Just like news sort of passes by you while you're trapped in this dark space. Like your eyes are closed, like you're
Yeah.
hibernating until the Zodiac killer comes back. I would love to experience that in a theater.
Yeah. Be fascinating. So the last thing I will say before we get to housekeeping and then diving into the movie a little bit more in depth here. Before I had watched it, like I know this was a movie about a serial killer. I knew Jake Gyllenhaal was in it. I don't think I knew Mark Ruffalo was in this until you were like, we're watching it for Shametember, and I was like, okay, let me look at who's in this. um, I have a vague memory of knowing Robert Downey Jr. was, or like I had heard that he was in this or something. But yeah, I think I thought this was going to be a little bit faster paced than it was. I should have known otherwise, because that's also what I know about David Fincher, is he's really good at building up this like slow atmospheric like thing here. And I there's something I wonder if it was another movie too that I must have been like mixing my memories of that one into this one. Jake Gyllenhaal in the phone booth. Is
Um,
that is he in some other movie around this time that
who's
like
in the
being in the
movie
phone?
Phone Booth?
It might be that,
Phone
or
Booth.
was there like a movie about a sniper?
That's Colin Farrell. Who's in the
Maybe it was
movie
him.
Cellular? Are you
I don't
thinking
think it
of the
was
movie?
Cellular.
That's Jason Statham. Are you thinking of the movie
No.
Source Code?
No, it must have been Colin Farrell that I'm like mixing my like that like the picture of him in the phone
Men
booth,
with
like,
startling eyes.
right? Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I think I was also expecting there to be like still unsolved mysteries that were presented in like some of those ciphers. Like I don't know anything about the Zodiac killer at all, right? Like it was just this like
You're putting
I
your
don't
hands
know.
up like you're innocent.
Don't shoot.
I assure you, officer, I don't know anything about the Zodiac killer.
But yeah, like I thought even when those ciphers first started to come on screen, I thought there would still be like one or two of them that were unsolved, right? And like after all this time, we haven't figured them out.
I think there was some that remained. Like I think the first cipher most of it is solved, but at the end there's a bunch of characters that the code breakers believe
extra,
are just
like
red
you said,
herrings. Are just there to complete the neat square of the cipher, I think that was maybe Untangled. Like, that was somebody's 2020 lockdown project.
Right. In the movie they have a specific line for what they think it is and stuff like that. And I don't remember if that leads them to anyone specifically, but I was expecting more stuff like that, of like, oh, there's still mysteries in this movie and they're unsolved, right? And not so much the like, what was up with the squirrels? Right. So yeah, good stuff though. I enjoyed this a lot. I loved it. So
wonderful. I knew you would. I had seen this movie once before.
Cool.
It really stuck with me, and I'm very happy to watch it again and talk to you about it.
Cool. Good stuff. Good stuff indeed. Well, with that, let's take a quick break for some housekeeping. And when we come back, we will dive a little bit more in depth to Zodiac. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for checking out this podcast. We hope you're enjoying it. If you didn't know, we make multiple different shows here at the Whatnauts, and a lot of hard work goes into making them, so we would love it if you check them all out. But none of this is possible without your support. Head over to patreon.com/thewhatnauts and you can get access to over 40 hours of exclusive content, including our Patreon first podcast, The Pilots Club, when you sign up at our $3 tier. Of course, there is a free version of the Pilots Club available, but episodes are exclusive to our Patreon for 2 years before they hit the free feeds. If you're interested in buying merch, we have shirts, hoodies, mugs, and more for sale over at thewhatnauts.com/store. Another great way to help us out is by subscribing and leaving a nice rating and review on your podcasting app of choice. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel for video versions of the show, trailer reactions, and live streams. And lastly, you can always find out more information about the shows we make on our website, thewhatnauts.com. All right, we are back. Once again, a big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. We love you a lot. Let's see, over on our Patreon exclusive Pilots Club, this September here is the 20th anniversary of Lost. So we went back and we talked about the pilot episode of Lost.
We had to go
back. Two-part. Yeah, we had to go back. So that was a lot of fun. Both Melissa and myself are big fans of that show. And so we just thought it would be appropriate. And we had a great time talking about Lost. Over on the free version of the Pilots Club, we released our episode on The Shield, a crime show that many people talk about being one of the best ones out there, as well as just one of the best pilot episodes out there. So that one is also a great show, one that I'm wanting to get back to eventually. But yeah, go check that out on the free version of the Pilots Club. And then right here on the review show, like I said, this was episode 302, which means we just hit a major milestone here on the podcast with episode 300. So go back and check that one out. We had a blast. We designed a theme park, so to speak. We came up with rides and attractions and food and what characters would be walking around, like what different sections and lands there would be. And it was all based on stuff that we covered here on the review show. So that was a lot of fun. We had a blast with that. And of course, we've already mentioned Looney Tunes back in action. That was what we first covered for Shametember. But yeah, last but not least, over on the Captain's Log, celebrity number 6 has been found.
Another mystery solved. Maybe we'll never know the identity of the Zodiac killer, but we have found the identity of celebrity number 6.
Right.
Rest easy.
the Zodiac of our time, right? Yeah, that I was not aware of that story until you brought it onto the show, Melissa. But even the shirt you're wearing now is kind of what like the prince looked like on
sort
the fabric that that
we know who
was
this
on
is because his name's right on the t-shirt.
Huh, Nick Cave. Wonder who's on the shirt.
I thought Nick Cave was a place. I didn't know that was a man.
Nick Cave the man, not Nick Cave the place. But yeah, we have a lot of fun on the Captain's Log, so go check that out as well. Keep an eye on the reactor core in the coming weeks, because Agatha All Along just got started. So did the Penguin. I have not started either of them yet. I'm probably gonna watch Agatha today, but we shall see. But yeah, I think we talked about Joe and one when they're like halfway done, and then one at the end. So
we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, but keep an eye on that feed. So. There you go. Okay. Well, now that we have done all the housekeeping, let's get into spoilers for Zodiac. There you go. Melissa, where should we start with this?
What I like most about this movie is that I think it finishes very strong. Sure, which not every film does. I think it's got the striking opening with the wonderful dolly shot of the girl picking up her bow in the car, and then they go to Lover's Lane, and they're like, "Is there somebody out there?" And you think it's because she's like cheating on her husband, and nope, Zodiac Killer. Zodiac Killer's got him, and then he leaves a creepy call, and then you just see a scary letter, arrive at the San Francisco Chronicle.
You get that, that like one long shot of the mail going in. It almost reminded me,
very creative.
It almost reminded me of the opening to Michael Clayton. That one scene in Michael Clayton where there's like the mail guy distributing all of the stuff there, and then they go into the conference room and it's loud and crazy and stuff in there. Whereas the outside was all quiet and silent. It's not quite the same thing that's happening in this. We still get the hustle and bustle of the newsroom.
There's hustle and bustle, truly hustle, because it is set in the 70s.
Yeah.
But it's never as chaotic and frantic as you think it might be. I watched the trailer for this movie. I borrowed it on Blu-ray. The Blu-ray looks like the envelope that the Zodiac Killer sends to the newspaper. It does not look like an actual Blu-ray you got off the shelf. So I love that. One of the features on it is the original theatrical trailer, which does make it look like a more conventional pulse-pounding thriller. And it's not that, but it's not that in the way that the trailer makes it seem. The trailer makes it seem like minute-to-minute exciting. Whereas what it is and the way it is handled within the story itself is like this letter arrives at the newspaper and they're all like, what does this mean? What do we do with it? Whose department is this? It's just sort of it's a puzzle. It's a conundrum. It's a bunch of men sitting around with their arms folded, frowning at it. It's not like throwing papers down on a table like, damn it, we gotta get this guy.
Yeah.
It's more reined in internal and thoughtful. Not that there aren't those bigger moments, but it leads up to those. It starts a little bit more restrained, a little bit more distant. And I think my favorite parts of this movie are the third act where Graysmith just picks it up and runs with it. When he's like, it's been so long with no results, no leads, nobody's figured this out. I'm drawn to this. I'm going to see what I can do, even though I'm not like a detective. I'm not really a journalist. I just draw political cartoons. and how far he goes into it, like making its kids help him with like research.
That's great.
Going into all these scary places, bothering Mark Ruffalo in the middle of the night. Like the diner scene when he says, it's 50 yards door to door. I've walked it.
Yeah.
And leading up to like the very final scene where they talk to Mike Mageau at the airport. That entire final run, that is when it's exciting. That is when it's its most tense, most thrilling. And you're so ready for it by that time. I like the pacing of this movie. I like the structure. I like that it ends so strongly and so sustained.
Yeah.
There's not really any dry spots in the film. It's got a lot of highlights, but there's no part where it's like, I can fast forward through this one.
Right. Yeah. So there's something about the end that I'll get back to in just a sec. But yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the pace and the trailer of this, because I did see in the little reception section on their Wikipedia a quote from Fincher himself talking about like the low like box office that it did when it came out. And he said, even with the box office being what it is, I still think there's an audience out there for this movie. Everyone has a different idea about marketing. But my philosophy is that if you market a movie to 16-year-old boys and don't deliver Saw or Seven, then they're gonna be the most vociferous ones coming out of the screenings saying this movie sucks, and you're saying goodbye to the audience who would get it because they're going to look at the ads and say, I don't want to see some slasher movie. And so that's interesting that you mentioned the trailer of like they make it seem more like a more traditional like thriller, maybe a little more faster paced, like all of this. And here he has this like real slow prodding mystery that just finally ramps up right at the end there. So I'm wondering if he was maybe not happy with the trailer or the marketing that was out there.
It was a March movie. It came out March 2nd. Made $84.7 million. Well, that's not bad, but this movie is clearly very expensive.
Yeah.
This movie got no Oscar nominations, which flabbergasts me. I know.
Yeah.
What took adapted screenplay that year that isn't this?
I don't know. Let's see.
It seems like it would have been much better at home in an October or November time slot, but
yeah. What was the date of the taxi cab one that Mark Ruffalo's character kept coming back to? The scene there. It was some fall date. I don't remember off the top of my head. But it would have been interesting if they released it on one of those dates. Or maybe they didn't want to be insensitive to the victims' families and stuff, right? You know,
who knows?
But interesting.
This movie, if you come to it in the right headspace, can really deliver. The first night, this was a movie I was always curious about, and I'm not easily scared, but I can be easily bummed out, which is very different.
Sure.
Show me all the blood and guts and gore and scary things you want. I'm perfectly happy. When something gets too sad is when I start to feel troubled.
Right.
And finally, there was one night a couple years ago, it was very foggy here. And I thought about the poster. This movie did have a very effective poster, which is the top of the Golden Gate Bridge sticking out of the fog. And it's all in those like blue tones, and the word Zodiac is just like floating there in the fog. That image is stuck with me. And on this very foggy night in like 2021, I thought, this is the night. I'm going to do it. I'm going to watch Zodiac. And I went on such a ride. I had such a time.
There you go. So I mentioned the thing about the end that I wanted to say here. So we are
Yes.
let's skip ahead to the end of this.
Absolutely.
I guess if you were like me and you did not know anything really about the Zodiac killer, I knew that people didn't really know who he was. Like I've heard the jokes of like, oh, Ted Cruz, he might be the Zodiac killer. I don't know. Anyways, I with the movie basically pointing to this one guy so heavily of like we're pretty darn sure it's him. Like there's so much circumstantial evidence stuff that maybe the cops can't exactly prove, but it's like it's right there. It was kind of wild to me that we did not get to see any of the scenes of the cops like finally going to try and arrest him, and the guy dying of a heart attack and them never knowing. That is what comes up in the like text afterwards and stuff. Like, here's what happened at the end. I was kind of surprised that we didn't get that bit. But also, I thought the film ended just fine. Like,
the
yeah,
end of this movie is the best part of it for me.
yeah,
And I think having so much not exposition, but these facts just to haunt you on your way out the door as you dump out your uneaten popcorn. Those black and white title cards at the end of a movie based on a true story are typically reserved for good news.
yeah.
So and so won their case. Coach Mr. Whatever still coaches football to this day. He lives in this city happily with his family.
Mm-hmm.
It's good news. It's tying things up in a nice, neat little bow. And to have that black and white text so cold and so objective be like, they finally had enough to get a warrant on Arthur Lee Allen. He died of a heart attack. They never got confirmation.
Yeah.
We still don't know. While that creepy hurdy-gurdy man song plays,
right, yeah.
which is a needle drop for the ages. That song is like 15% of why this movie works so well for me.
It's creepy. It's
weird. It's a song I know I've heard before. When I first heard it, because it plays like on the radio in the car in like the first part of the movie, during that first killing in the Lover's Lane, I'd recognized it and I'm like, kind of creepy in this context. Whereas I don't know if I'd ever thought that about that song before.
Right.
And then when it comes in at the end, while Mike Mageau, who's been like survived that killing and then has been like off the grid, had so much valuable information he could have shared, but was like, I want no part of this. I'm terrified. I'm exhausted. I'm done. I'm like in the woods in Canada somewhere. And finally somebody tracks him down. And it's not even any of our main characters who go to see him at the end of the movie. It's like detective number 4. It's like a guy you've seen sometimes through the movie.
In the background, like, yeah.
Lays out those photos. And he's like, I'm like 8 out of 10 sure. But then he continues to look, and he's like, that is him. The last time I saw this face was the night of July 4th, 1968. And then they start playing Hurdy-Gurdy Man with its like long lead up, like very quietly in the background. And it keeps building as it goes to those title cards. And the title cards have no comfort for you. Just zilch.
Yeah. Yeah. Wild stuff. What was interesting to me as well with the ending, here's some spoilers for Mindhunter season 2, which was about the Atlanta child murders that happened in the 80s, I believe. It almost has a similar ending where they like there's one person that they want to arrest, and I don't remember if they do or not, but yeah, so something happens that's real similar where like the guy dies or commits suicide or something, and
I think
the killings stop, but they never got like true confirmation that it was him.
I think what happened in Mindhunter is that man was arrested and was only charged and convicted for like the most minor of crimes.
Yes, yeah,
and he was never officially pinned with the child killings that Mindhunter is so convinced that he did.
Yeah. And yeah, again, just like another parallel here of like, but we don't know exactly, right? Like we think we have the guy. We're so close, but it's not 100%
legally
sure.
on the books. Yes.
Right, yeah.
That the number of close calls in this movie is so, like I said, more haunting than frustrating. One obstacle that the characters keep running into over and over again, and this isn't even something that seems like the Zodiac killer did on purpose. He's not playing some mind game. He's not outsmarting them and outfoxing them. He just has happened to have these killings in a variety of different counties up and down California, which means these different killings fall under different jurisdictions. And when this is in like the late 60s and the 70s, when technology isn't great yet, there's just not information being shared from jurisdiction to jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And they run into that over and over and over.
They were like, well, can you fax us that information? No, we don't have a fax machine. We'll mail it to you. It's like, well, that's going to take like a week and we can't waste that time. Right. And then once they hang up the phone call, that they also reveal like, well, we don't have a fax either. Like we couldn't have gotten them the info. That, like, it was just like, oh my God, you idiots. Like,
it's not. In another movie, in a more maybe Hollywoodized, glossier version of this movie, there might have been like corruption or something in the police force, which is like a thing that happens, but does not seem like it happened in this particular case. Like nobody is purposefully looking the other way or trying to obscure anything. Nobody seems like they're bad at their job. It's just things get missed. You're not there on the scene on the day. There's a piece of information that just falls through the cracks and doesn't get to you. And this whole movie is the wrong thing fell through the cracks at the wrong time. And you don't find out about it until 6 years later.
Yeah. It's kind of amazing to see how many times that happens in this film on this particular case. It's just it's an interesting, right, because like that is what makes you root for Jake Gyllenhaal's character here of like, he seems like he's been the only one to kind of go around and start collecting all of this information, even if he hasn't looked at it yet. Right. Like, like he's been the one trying to gather it all into one spot. Whereas the cops are like, oh, they have to mail it here. Well, all right. Who cares? Let's move on to something, or let's just work with what we have. The evidence we have. Not right.
They're not Chief Wiggum. You know, they are not either the very corrupt or very lazy cop figure that you might have seen in other stories. But there's just a lot of like exasperated throwing up hands. Like you said, we're going to work with what we have. It's everything is a game of telephone, like literally a game of telephone. You have to call somebody who calls somebody. There's no email. There's barely a fax. There's the illusion that somebody should be able to fax something to you. But no, we actually don't have that in our department yet. And there's all this driving around and nobody has a great sense of direction. Like, I think it's during Robert's date with Melanie where he mentions, was it Paul Avery? Was it Robert Downey Jr.'s character was driving to meet somebody and like, I have to go to San Diego. And she's like, do you know how far away San Diego is? And he's like, oh, you're right. does he know it's that far? I'm going to go to the
2 hours,
payphone and
yeah.
call him. Right?
Yeah.
Like, California is so big and long. It takes so long to get anywhere. Just
Yeah.
the hurdles of nobody is deliberately putting this in your way. It's just circumstantial and like very, very small human failings of, oh, I forgot to tell you, or oh, I didn't think it was that important. And just it falls through. It just Swiss. You got a Swiss cheese with holes in it, and then you line up all the Swiss cheeses, and you're like, there's a hole all the way through to the bottom. I can see the table under all these cheeses. How did this happen?
Yeah. Yeah. Man, yeah. It's such an interesting thing to think about, that like, because even with Mindhunter, when they're telling the story about how the FBI came up with their methodology for profiling what they then coined as a serial killer, like that stuff was all new, and they had to go around and teach that to these like local police departments who didn't really know how to handle all of this stuff. And that kind of seems to be the case with what's happening here, right? Like no one is really putting like I think they've put together that this guy is a serial killer. That much is obvious. But again, because it's in different jurisdictions, there's almost this reluctance to work together with these other departments and truly like, oh, okay, do we need to make a task force of like an agent from each jurisdiction, so to speak, or because the first known killing took place here, do they get to like do all? Yeah, there's this lack of communication.
Yes, and a lack of structure and plan to follow. There is not a process guide on how to do this. And people are struggling to combine their resource and figure out how to do it. Yeah. They're on the spot.
Yeah, indeed.
And then you get to Robert, who, because he is not a detective, he does not officially work in this capacity.
Just likes puzzles.
He's not even one of the reporters, where the reporters there at the Chronicle have their own like divisions, like I cover this side of the city, or I cover politics, or I cover crime. Like he draws cartoons. He's like already so far out of his league that leagues don't matter to him, and he will go anywhere. He doesn't care.
It's like, I just have to have a drawing by the end of the week. Like I can kind of do whatever I need to do all of that. Yeah. I loved when he employed his kids to like help him go through all of the
and it's like checking like what phase was the moon in on this day. It's like Farmer's Almanac stuff that the kids can look through. Like he is giving his kids like the safest, cleanest thing they could research. The kids seem like they're having fun.
Yeah, and
they like helping dad.
Like with a name like Zodiac, that is something you kind of have to think about, which the movie just in that one scene kind of briefly went into. Like, what are the cycles of the moon here? Like, does this line up with Zodiac signs and symbols? Does that have something to do with it? But that's also not something that the movie really explores. Like they're almost more interested in that watch logo, right? Than like, do the Zodiac signs mean anything in this?
And you'd think that it would have a larger meaning, that there would be an even bigger puzzle. Again, in the like glossier, shinier version of this movie, the more Hollywood one, it would have more of a, I don't know, a Da Vinci Code to it. And instead it's like,
which is,
this guy,
like I said, I think kind of what I was expecting, like some kind of big, larger puzzle that maybe is still unsolved.
Instead it's just like, this guy has a watch. He like needs to come up with this identity for himself. And he's like, this is good. I'll use this. And he makes a code
symbol that like who pays attention to the watch here, right?
Right. And he builds a code out of like library books, not like ancient mystical tomes or like, underground the mystical, like satanic books or anything. It's just
Right.
like code breaking in World War II, checked out from the library.
Stolen from the library.
Stolen,
right?
which is like the smartest thing he does, maybe, is steal books so that there's no record of him checking them out under his name. He's like just smart enough. But in other ways, like there's just pure happenstance. Like it really does not seem like he planned.
Like
and I'll kill only one person per county.
But that's the thing of like, at least looking back, like since we did not get him, right? We did not get to truly question him and figure him out. Like, that could also be a real smart play of like, I can play these counties off of each other. I could, like, I know that information sharing isn't the greatest, right? And that may be fairly common knowledge depending on how other cases have been handled and how public those have been. Like, I don't think it's a stretch for him to realize that and be like, I can use that, and that's smart, right?
Yes, but there's also,
we don't know, right?
Right. And there's also not the point where anybody is standing around looking at the conspiracy board like, he's doing this on purpose. He's trying to outsmart us.
Exactly. Like, it's just enough where it's like, it's kind of a smart move. He's breaking his pattern. He's doing this, but it's not so much of a cat and mouse game where he's purposely like, and now I will do one in this other county over here because fuck you, right? Like,
yeah.
Like it's just enough to mix things up, and then he almost moves on, right?
Yeah.
And does something else to play with them, or some clue is unearthed that's like, well, maybe we can go down that rabbit hole, right? And it's so spread out that it's this like shotgun style approach that I think is what tripped them up the most, not like, oh, this guy's a genius, he's so smart, right?
Exactly. You can untangle a genius plot, but there's like enough of a pattern here that you feel like there should be more of a pattern, but there isn't.
Right.
Like, one thing that struck me is that he doesn't have consistent weapon usage.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes he'll shoot somebody, sometimes he'll stab somebody. Whereas I believe more typically a killer would have like, this is my method. This is my weapon. Right. He's like a little bit more all over the place. And he'll like not wear a mask for one killing and then wear a mask for another killing. Like, he doesn't have his own pattern yet. It's not like he's doing something and the detectives are trying to figure it out. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's still shaping it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the killing at Lake Berryessa, which is one of the standout set pieces of the film. It's so, you've got this couple just lying down on a blanket on this hill by this lake,
having a picnic,
and the landscape is like beautiful, but also like a little lonely. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a park where there's some trees, but it's not like enough trees. There's no structures around. You can't see a bench or a pavilion or a playground or a parking lot.
Right. It's not like a public park. They're off the path somewhere else, right, where it's just them. But it's also not your like Lover's Lane thing that we saw at the start, where it's like it's also not a park, but it's the like unofficial spot that, you know, young couples go to make out and have sex and stuff like that.
Right. The first killing has something you recognize from like urban legends of hook hands on doors, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And the Lake Berryessa killing, it's like, you know, this is a public park that people can go to. But once you're dropped in there, it doesn't look like it. It looks far more remote. And it's a beautiful day, but also there's so little going on that it feels almost cold. Like, there's no motion. Like, there's very little movement to the water or the trees. And there's nobody else around. And then they just think they see a guy walking around in the distance. They're like, oh, well, public land, somebody else is here. And like he tries to hide behind a tree, which isn't going to work, sir. And the wife, like the I don't remember if they're married. The woman notices it, and the guy's like, he's taking a leak. I don't know. And the guy, the Zodiac killer, steps out in his like weird
all black,
mask.
Square, right, almost burlap sack looking mask, but painted black.
Full Batman villain. When I know that Paul Dano's Riddler is largely based off of the Zodiac killer, but like even more than that, even if you've never seen the Batman villain that took inspiration from the Zodiac killer, you look at him and you're like, what? Are you from the pages of Watchmen? Where are you?
Right, yeah.
Why do you look like that? And like he's got the gun, and like they don't know if it's even loaded or not. Like there's something so awkward about his behavior. Not threatening, but awkward. He doesn't know what he's doing.
There's an awkwardness to the whole situation, but even through that, I think his, like, I don't know, man. Like I think that's one of the killings. I almost wonder if he left the guy alive on purpose.
Right, you don't know, because now we've seen 2 killings where somebody survived.
Like,
and one,
it's such a weird thing. Sorry to interrupt, but
it's okay.
It's such a weird interaction for the guy, for the victim to be like, how do I know it will be loaded? Like, or like, and he like shows him the inside because he knows like people will want to know this.
Yes.
And that's such a weird thing to say, to be honest, and makes me almost wonder, like, is this guy in on it? Like, does he like? Is this the thing of like? And I will tell them your story, like, but we can make it look like I'm a victim here, and they won't suspect me or that, right?
I think it's more like, I think it's more like that guy looking at this threatening man who is threatening, but it also is behaving so oddly. It's like, is this the first time you're ever doing this? And he's like, do I actually have something to be scared of here? Like when he asks, is the gun even loaded? He's like, I am going to be so embarrassed at work on Monday if the gun wasn't even loaded. Can you tell me how scared of you I am supposed to be?
I don't think in a situation where a guy has a gun to you, your mind is thinking, well, I mean, like, it might come across like maybe it's not loaded. I don't know, but that's too much of a risk to take, right? You have to assume that it is loaded, kind of no matter what, even if he gets one over on you. And for him to like ask that and say like people will want to know, like he's almost assuming he's going to survive this thing, and I just like that strikes me as odd too. Who knows, right? That's all just speculation and stuff like that. But yeah, then like, why have that gun then if you're just gonna stab them all?
Right. It's
I don't know.
It's so strangely improvisational, almost bumbling. And the man, that seems like a miracle that man survived. Like, he does get stabbed so many times.
Sure, yeah.
Like, that seems like a freak chance. But when you put it together that 2 of these guys survived, you're like, how good is this guy at being the Zodiac killer if 2 of these guys have survived? One weird factoid is that Mike Mageau, the very first guy you see in the movie, even though it was the 4th of July, he was wearing, like, 4th of July in California, he was wearing like 3 pairs of pants and like 2 sweaters and a jacket. He was like layered up. And people believe that's what might have saved his life. Just that, he's being shot at, but the bullet has so many different layers to go through before it gets to him. And nobody's ever really gotten answers to why he's wearing so many layers. Like, are you
Yeah.
cold? Are you just like a little insecure guy and you want to appear bigger? Were you worried that like your date's husband would come and beat you up? So that's why you have a little
Right.
padding on
Yeah.
you. What was it for? And like, that's another sort of weird thing just to tickle at the back of your brain.
Yeah.
It does it mean
Absolutely.
anything? If it does, it doesn't mean anything menacing, but like, what? Why?
Yeah.
What's the deal there?
Strange. I think the thing that I noticed that the movie didn't really go into that I thought was strange is when they get the footprints of the shoe and they realize the shoe is this like Air Force shoot, like the people that like it's meant to walk on the wings of planes is what they
Yeah.
did. Like it is a military thing, but like that specifically is like Air Force or Marines or something like that. And then every other time in the movie when they mention military service, it's always Navy. And it was just like, wait, so what was the thing with the shoes then? Like, why is a Navy guy wearing what? And no mention of it, no thought of like, why has it switched now? Yeah. Huh. And it was just like,
true.
That's so bizarre.
There's got to be more information here.
Yeah.
Another standout sequence is when there's the woman and her baby, and the man flags her down saying, "Oh, one of your lights is out. Can I fix that for you?" And she's like, "Okay." And then she keeps driving, and then her car breaks down, and then the guy pulls up behind her and he's like, "Well, I guess it was just part of a bigger problem your car is having. I'd be happy to take you to the next filling station." And then she gets in with her baby and he's like, "I did not know you had a baby."
Yeah.
And you don't see this man. Another tactic the movie used is that every time the Zodiac killer is in a scene, they have a different actor playing him.
Yeah.
And like a different actor playing the voice on the phone so that you can't get a handle on the guy. He has no specific vocal pattern or physical silhouette. Like he is kind of a chameleon and he could be anybody. But when I first saw that scene, I didn't know if it was another, like, is this actually him?
Yeah.
Or is this a case of a copycat? Or is this a case of paranoia? Like if the story of the Zodiac killer is so prevalent in society in this area, is this suddenly cutting to this woman at night with her baby in the car? Is this an illustration of, and this is what all the stories of the Zodiac killer are doing to the public? And these are the emotional stakes and why they need to catch this guy, because everybody is just so nerve-wracked all around, and seemingly like interactions that could be innocent now appear so menacing because anybody could be the Zodiac killer.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you still don't really know. Like that man was some sort of a threat. He does say, "I will throw your baby out the window before I kill you." But what was that him?
Yeah,
why do we think it's him as opposed to somebody else?
Yeah, it's just the zeitgeist, right? The the Zodiac killer is happening right now. Something else to again to go back to Mindhunter. I'll continue to go back to Mindhunter since these just feel like two peas in a pod.
Yeah.
But in the interviews that they were doing with the co-ed killer, it kind of seemed like these serial killers, even if they weren't in correspondence, they were kind of like, they had a sense, like they could kind of pick each other out from across the prison yard or whoever, or like in the news, so to speak. They kind of like kept up. So like who knows if this is even a case of like this is another potential serial killer who's just starting to become emboldened of like, well, maybe I can hide what I do in the midst of this guy's stuff, right? Yeah, it's scary, and I liked that scene a lot because that is one of just like there's really no way to know, right? And it almost feels like what Mindhunter was doing with most of their cold opens, where we just see this guy kind of being an oddball, being a weirdo, be like looking at this rope and like tying a knot over and over while he's watching TV, and like while he's on his mail job, right? Like kind of staying a little bit longer at this one house and casing it, right? Like there's just these weird things, and this almost feels like a first outing of something like that.
Yeah.
Right. Of like, okay, now I'm ready to go, and I'm going to make my first kill, and here we go. Like, it feels almost amateurish of like, oh, I didn't know you had a baby. Like you just kind of picked someone at random on the road here. I don't know. Right. All of this is speculation. That's really all we can do with a lot of what this case is, but that's why it's so fascinating.
Yeah. And the second guy, the other guy who they think it might be, like Rick Sullivan or whatever his name is, I like that he's I don't think we ever see this man, but I like that he's introduced as, if it's not Arthur Lee Allen, Arthur Lee Allen could never be proved. And I like how close everything is and how much of it just comes down to like Philip Baker Hall looking at the penmanship, and he's like, handwriting can't match. And like, just this like one man in his judgment call as to whether or not a K can be drawn the same way can rule this entire thing out, can make or break it. Everything hinges on details that are that small and that subjective. And then you get to this other suspect and you're like, is this it? Are we going to actually clear the finish line here? And there's so many details that you pick up and you're like, is this the thread? Is the allusion to the most dangerous game and to the films, does that have meaning? Let me chase it as far as I can. And he goes to Charles Fleischer's house. That old man is the voice of Roger Rabbit. That's who that actor is.
Amazing.
When he goes to his house, there's like I mentioned earlier, this is not a jump scare movie, but there are a couple moments where just the pit of your stomach just drops. And it's like when the man in the car says, I'm going to throw your baby out the window. When Jake Gyllenhaal says it's 50 yards door to door, I've walked it, at the very end of the movie. And one of these is when Robert Graysmith goes to this old projectioneer's house to talk to him about projectionist. Thank you. Goes to this projectionist house because they believe that the Zodiac killer, specifically Rick whatever, that suspect, I think, worked for him lettering and designing the posters for his old silent movie house. And they're like, these two Ks are similar. It could be him. And he goes there trying to build this case and trying to ask about, your friend left a film reel with you and told you to never watch it. What did you? Is it still there? Can I see it? And the man's like, yes, that happened. Then he took that back. I've never seen it. So there's this like sub mystery of what's that about? What's on that reel? Is that bad?
Yeah. Who was the one that called in to even say to look at him, right?
Yeah. Why? Yes. There was like somebody told somebody and there's pieces missing. And like, who is that? Why does this person have this information? And he asks about who makes the posters because they think the person making the posters could be the killer. And the old man says, Oh no,
Well,
I make the posters.
they thought Rick, they thought Rick was the one, and he was like, no, Rick never made the posters. I make them. And this is when he's already in the basement, which you've already connected the like, there's not many houses that have basements, which was another clue in this other thing, right?
Yes.
So it was just like, oh shit. All right, here we go. I'm going to follow you down into this creepy basement. And he, like, when he goes down the steps, there's a telephone right there, and Jake Gyllenhaal like looks at the phone. I was wondering if he was gonna do something with that, like take it off the hook, dial 911, and just leave it there, and like right, but that's not what he did. But yeah, he goes in and it's dark, it's creepy, it's shadowy, like all of this stuff. And yeah, like in shadow you hear the guy be like, no, I made the posters. And then you hear like a creak upstairs, and you're just like, holy shit, what is happening right now? Oh my god, like this is it, you stumbled on it. And then nothing after that, right? He runs out of the house, and
and it's even if that episode had like nothing to do with the larger Zodiac case, what's happening there? It's stuff like that. The inclusion of these side streets in this movie that really gets to me, that makes this movie have such a staying power and it compels me so much. What does that mean on its own, not even to the Zodiac killer, of its own accord?
Yeah.
What's that? Who's up there?
Yeah, exactly. There's so many interesting avenues to go down. Man, I feel like we've talked about a lot of the mystery and clues and stuff. I know we've been talking for quite a while already.
We haven't talked enough about Mark Ruffalo.
Sure. Yeah, I was going to ask if you wanted to talk about that, or if you had like favorite scenes that we haven't talked about yet. We mentioned the time where I was about to say Grayskull. That's not his name. What's his name? Graysmith. Graysmith and Paul Avery.
That's a great Halloween costume. Is you're dressed like He-Man, but you've got a bunch of notes on the Zodiac killer, and you're Robert Grayskull.
Yeah. But no, when they go out to the bar to get a drink, and Jake Gyllenhaal gets the like blue fruity drink in the midst of this like real dark, seedy, smoky bar, right? And it's just this bright blue, just this thing that should not be in that bar. And he's like, you wouldn't make fun of me if you had one. And then he like has a sip, and then it smash cuts to them like they've had 6 of them each, right? It's great.
Stacks of glass.
Such a good scene. Loved it.
There are some very funny cuts like that in this movie.
Yeah.
Or like, I love the shot of him at dinner, and he's staring at the TV report, and then Chloe Sevigny just like moves her face into the frame and glares at him.
Yeah. Great stuff.
There's a couple laughs. I love Toski always asking for food, just eating his partner's sandwich.
Crackers? Like specifically animal crackers.
I do, thank you.
Yes.
I'm ready. I'm ready to solve this mystery.
She has them on screen now.
Number one supply. This is what you need to solve a mystery. A magnifying glass. A little notepad and pencil. And the animal crackers.
And like in my mind, my like in the scene where they think there's a letter sent by Toski, like my mind immediately went back to the name is Zodiac. He likes animal crackers. Like here we go, round 3, right? Suspect number 3.
You're you're right. Again, you can see the other version of this movie that is less concerned with factually depicting what we have records of and depicting the minutia and the exhausting granularity of the investigation, that is going for something slick and jazzy and Hollywood would have. But is it Detective Toschi?
Yeah. Indeed.
I love his bow tie. I love his very tired wife.
There's one scene that I think is cleared up in, or not cleared up, but is very much the Hollywood, let's make this fit, that I think if it happened in real life, and who knows if it actually did, it would have gone down very differently. I mentioned that Toschi often goes back to that corner to stake out that corner where the taxi cab was on the anniversary, because it also, like, it happened to be his birthday, right? Or was it his partner's birthday? I don't remember off the top of my head. But he goes back to stake it out, and on like the second or third time, or it has to have been the third time that we see him staking it out, he decides to leave and go somewhere else. But as he's leaving, a taxi cab pulls up on the exact corner, like they're crossing each other as it's happening, and stops on that same corner. And who gets out? Jake Gyllenhaal's character, right? Graysmith himself. But if that's the case, why didn't Toschi turn around and be like, whoa, what the hell? Why are you here? I know you saw him. Stop right at this corner here. But no, you go, and he stops right here, and it's just like, all right. I doubt that went down exactly like that, but it makes for a good scene, right?
I like this movie has a 3-split bill, which I don't think I've ever seen before. First credit card, title card in the movie is Jake Gyllenhaal, name in the middle, slightly higher, Mark Ruffalo over to the left, Robert Downey Jr. on the right. This like little pyramid of the three of them. You will see that sometimes with like two people, if it's a really close, like you two are co-leads, you know, one person's name is, you see it first, but it's lower, and the other person's name, like you see it second, but it's higher. I've never seen one with 3 people.
Sure, yeah.
And that's just sort of administratively intriguing to me. Is this like a budget thing? Was this movie so expensive that they're like, we can't pay one of you actual lead actor credits? Like, you 3 have to share. You boys play nice.
Yeah.
Or if it is an illustration of, this is not a movie that is about one person. It is not about an individual. It is about a collective effort, and it's about the mystery itself. And it's less of a character piece and more of a mystery piece, a tone piece. I don't know. But it takes a long time for things to be introduced. You don't meet Toschi for a while. Toschi does not meet the other characters for a while. I don't know if Toschi and Avery have scenes together. I'd have to watch it again and double check. It takes I think it is exactly halfway through the movie before you get that interview scene with Arthur Lee Allen. It takes that long to get even that close to a prime suspect, or somebody who they want to be a prime suspect. And then Robert Downey Jr., Paul Avery will disappear for a long stretch of the movie, and somebody will pick it up and carry it and put it down, and it'll be somebody else's. And then it's just this run of just Graysmith losing his mind for the last 45 minutes of the film and bothering Toschi in the middle of the night. And then you have that great scene at the diner. The ebb and flow of this movie, how much it shifts back and forth, how completely atypical it is among other films. It really makes it work. Not a lot of movies could pull off what this movie does.
Yeah. last thing I want to say, I think my favorite scene of the whole film is the interview scene with Lee, whatever his whole name was.
Arthur Lee Allen.
Arthur Lee Allen. Yeah, that was, I think, my favorite scene of the whole thing, because this one, it's also again very akin to the interviews that they do in Mindhunter on that stuff, but it really, it, on one way to look at it is that Arthur Lee Allen is playing with them, and he knows they're on to him, but he has the ego to like sit with his legs crossed in a certain way that you can really see my shoe. Here it is. Like here's the shoe you're looking for. And then he has his hands in his lap and he's playing with the watch, the Zodiac watch. And to his credit, Tosky does notice that, and is like, let me see your watch, right? But just like, it's not enough to be like, is he actually playing with us? Like, I don't know. Like, and like, he is kind of clueless when they're at his house of like, why are you here? Like, what's happening? I just have all these squirrels. Leave me and my squirrels alone. Right? It's this haunting scene of like, I don't really like it's so filled with tension, but no one mentions it. Is the thing here. Yes. Like, I like your shoes. What kind of shoes are those here, right? Oh, man.
And there's still the ambiguity between how smart are you?
Right.
How much of a game are you playing? Is what you just did very smart or very foolish? Like when he talks about, yes, I had bloody knives in the back of my car, but that's because I killed a chicken for dinner. You can ask my neighbor. Well, you can't ask my neighbor. He actually just died of a heart attack. I'm like, should you have said that?
Right.
What do we do with this information?
Yeah. Did you not realize that your watch is a major clue? Did you? I don't know. Right. Like, yeah.
And I think John Carroll Lynch is such an excellent choice for this role. He's just like a large man. He just has a real presence.
Yeah.
And a character actor with quite a career, but one of his other notable roles is Marge's husband in the movie Fargo. Like the nice guy who's like painting ducks and just wants one of his paintings of ducks to be chosen for a state stamp.
Yeah.
And when I think of him in that movie and when I think of him in this movie, he's got the same attribute, but it's used very differently in those two movies, which is that when he looks at you, John Carroll Lynch is absolutely paying attention to you. There's no distractions. He's not thinking of anything else. He's paying it. He's locked in on you.
He's focused.
And that can be and that can be very sweet in Fargo and very terrifying in Zodiac, but it's the same thing that he can do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's this feeling, the way he carries himself, right? That like can be different things in different scenarios. And it's not ever like an admission of guilt or a confession of some kind of crime or a tall tale sign of like, you have the symptom, right? That means this one thing, right? It's just, oh man, this is creepy.
Yes. Creep City.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. I enjoyed this a lot. Highly recommend it if you haven't checked it out. Do you have any other things that you wanted to mention or point out? I know we've been talking for quite a while here.
There's a lot of great stuff through the whole thing. I love a movie that has distinct parts to it. It isn't necessarily jumpy or episodic. But this is a movie full of distinct sequences that you look forward to and that you anticipate and that you really remember. And watching the movie, you're like, I am excited for like 5 things to happen. And I don't remember what order they happen in. Like, when is it Ione Skye in the car? When do they interview Arthur Lee Allen? When do they go see Dirty Harry? When do they? It's so specific. in everything it does.
Mm-hmm.
It's so skilled and like so uniquely eerie in a way that I think very few films are.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy to watch it again. The first time I saw it, I was so struck by it. And I'm like, is what's getting to me what Fincher does or what just the true story actually is? And watching it more and like watching like an hour-long featurette on the Blu-ray. And there's plenty more. Like there's more I haven't even gone through. Like a lot of it is what Fincher and team are doing.
Yeah.
There is such craft at play in this film. Definitely very highly recommend it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Nothing but great things to say here. So, whew, I don't know, man. That was a good one. I liked it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff indeed. Let me see here. That means it is time for us to get to bingo. Let me pull this up on screen. Here we are. Here's our bingo cards. We're getting down to the wire here with our last few things. It's always much more difficult when we've gotten most of our grids marked off. We're just hoping for a few things. I have one that I think I can get. We don't see it, but they mention it. We have a contaminated crime scene. The one at the lake ends up being contaminated because they said they just kind of wrapped everything up and shoved it in, right? Like, so how do you feel about that? We don't see it, but they mention it.
I think that's true. Yes. It's not one of the major obstacles in this movie, things being contaminated, but just a general sense of this isn't a day-to-day thing. You have to take this like a couple levels more seriously than you do anything else. Stop just walking around.
Indeed. Okay, I'll mark that one. No time for breakfast. Did we get anything like that with the little coffee guy there, right?
Oh yeah, there's little coffee guy. And there's like Tosky just always being hungry. Another fun fact I learned going through the IMDb trivia on this movie, and who knows how reliable that is. I didn't seek out a second source.
Yeah.
Even though it is pronounced Tosky in the movie. Kyle, where's the place Luke Skywalker goes to get his power converters?
Tosche Station. I had the exact same thought, right? Is it Tosky or Tosche?
It's George Lucas grew up in the Bay Area. Huh. He followed this Zodiac story because it was like all the news, in this area in this time when he was growing up. And he really admired Detective Tosky through reading about him in the newspaper. I don't think I ever met the man, but like would read the stories about, is it him? Did he write a letter?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I get the impression that's a real stand-up guy. I wish people wouldn't judge him so harshly. He's like, I'm going to name a station in my new sci-fi film after him. And then I don't know if just like Mark Hamill pronounced it Tosche on the day. And he's like, that's good, Mark. Thank you. Don't know, but sentiment is nice.
I mean, yeah, there's probably like television news clips of him saying his name out there, but yeah, who knows? So yeah, I don't quite know if we have no time for breakfast.
I'd give you no time for breakfast. The fact that guy's just always running. Yeah, he's always hungry. He always wants somebody else's food.
Okay.
Like he goes to see Anthony Edwards in the diner and he's like, I haven't eaten all day. And just looks at the sandwich and Anthony Edwards just gives him half his sandwich.
I will take it. And that gives me another bingo.
Good for you.
I'm kind of surprised we didn't get a red string conspiracy board in this.
Again, too shiny, too conventional.
Yeah.
People weren't doing that in real life in 1975.
Yep. Indeed.
So it's not in here.
Did we get a cow? Is there a cow in the background anywhere here?
Oh,
I don't think
not
so.
a very relevant cow. No.
Okay, then I think that's all that I have here, because other stuff I have is like time loop, went to a different planet, male protagonist takes off his shirt. Right, we don't have the like
none
the,
of
like,
that. No abs in this movie.
Gyllenhaal hot man moment. Like, oh yeah, here we go, hot guy
I'm gonna
moment.
Solve this puzzle.
Yeah, right. Let's get down to business. Defeat the Zodiac killer.
I really worked up a sweat going to the library and checking out a cryptography book.
Or like Mark Ruffalo taking off his shirt to seductively eat his animal.
The shirt is off, but somehow the holster is still on.
Yeah.
took off holster, took off shirt, put holster back on.
All right. Let's see. Any on your end you think you can get?
No, not this week. That's okay.
All right. I mean, occult crimes. That's the question mark on this of like, I don't know, man.
Doesn't seem like it. It's not even pursued that much.
All right. Well, let's see if I can get us back to the main screen. There we go. Melissa, let's get to recommendations. For people who enjoyed this, what else might they like?
We have repeatedly mentioned Mindhunter. This is a 2-season show, co-created and partially directed by David Fincher. You can find this on Netflix. It is also based on true events, and it is about the founding of the FBI's serial killer unit. Like the first couple people who were like, there's a different type of killer out there that we need to start studying and tracking. And the show is... It's got mystery to it, but a lot of it is we are going to go to this prison. We are going to talk to this convicted killer whose the mystery's already been solved, but we need to understand his psychology.
Yeah.
This stars Jonathan Groff, who feels like he is next in line. Like Holden Ford and Robert Graysmith feel of a kind with each other. They're both these like Boy Scouts with like eyes that hurt to look at, who are like naive and possessed, as you said.
Yeah. Good
boys who just want to do a good job, but they will screw up so many things in the path of them and their goal. Even though they're like, but gold is good, right? And you're like, yes, gold is good, but
yeah,
and
really
they just kind of wrecked some lives on the way there.
They just don't understand like how they keep messing things up.
There's a story about a nuclear Boy Scout. Do you know that story?
No, I don't think so.
There's a true event. There was this actual Boy Scout, this like 15-year-old kid in like Ohio or somewhere, just like in like the 70s or 80s maybe. And he was really good at like chemistry and science projects. And he started doing this science fair project that was like something he was going to get like an Eagle Scout badge for. And he wound up like creating a nuclear reactor in the shed in his backyard.
Oh, I've heard, if not this exact one, I've heard similar stuff of like the man who built a rocket in his backyard and like, you know.
I feel like
stuff like
David
that.
Fincher might be the most qualified person to make a movie about the nuclear Boy Scout, because that is who he has been making entertainment about. Nuclear Boy Scout next in line after Robert Graysmith and Holden Ford. You may also watch David Fincher's Seven. This is another movie that I was wary of. I'm like, I know people say it's good, but it seems like too dark, too much of a bummer. I did finally watch it a year or two ago, and it is a fascinating thing and like very well put together, not as harrowing of an experience as I thought it would be. I think because even if you've never seen Seven, you have absorbed the contents of Seven. So it doesn't have exactly the same edge as it did when it first came out in the 90s and like completely shocked people, but it is worth seeing.
Yeah.
I also mentioned the Batman. That
That's
does
a good one.
have,
Yeah.
The Riddler in that movie is very inspired by the Zodiac killer, and that movie is more of a mystery. There's puzzles to solve. It's got a little bit more of a procedural element to it. Another movie that's got a detective solving a puzzle is Longlegs. Longlegs, which is much more of a horror movie,
Yeah.
but has such a specific sense of atmosphere and mood and aesthetic design to the movie. It kind of reminded me of the sort of eerie coldness of Zodiac and Mindhunter and other Fincher projects. Also features a creepy scene at a hardware store,
Sure. Yeah.
if that's what you're looking for. Other movies that I think have very haunting endings, just like a real sharp strike at you right there at the end. Parasite kind of has that.
Yeah.
And we talked about we have covered Parasite on the show, and we also covered Us, Jordan Peele's Us, on the show earlier this year.
Yeah.
And the movie, the final shot in Us is so eerie and unnerving to me. Not exactly in the way that other things are, but like that's an image I'll remember forever. That final shot in Us, strange as it is.
Indeed.
A portrait of a city, a portrait of a California city with almost unnervingly crisp digital photography and cool lighting. And it's just guys in suits driving around in cabs all night. And Mark Ruffalo's trying to solve something. If you want more of that, you can watch Collateral.
Sure.
Much more of a crime. It's a crime movie that doesn't really have much of a mystery to it. You're just watching Tom Cruise assassinate people while he makes Jamie Foxx drive him around in his cab, and Jamie Foxx is like, how do I get out of here?
Yeah.
Collateral. And then there's another real story, the story of Kryptos. Do you know Kryptos?
Nope.
Kryptos is a sculpture that I think is outside of the CIA. And it is these maybe like 8 feet tall sort of metal sheets that are just sort of like a big wiggle there,
Sure.
a big squiggle there in the courtyard of the CIA where the CIA goes to have like coffee and a bagel. And punched into it is this code that's got like an actual secret message in it. And people have been trying to solve the message and they think they've got it, but also they think there's mistakes in it. And they're like, what part of this is a mistake and what part of this is something we just haven't cracked yet?
Yeah.
Have we not done it yet, or can it never be done?
And how symbolic is that to have something like that outside of the CIA? Yeah. Interesting.
Look up Kryptos. Fascinating story.
Cool. Good stuff. I will also throw in True Detective, especially season 1, right? If you want that like slow burn detective story, it all comes to a head at the end. Definitely check out True Detective. That's a great one. There's a manga by Naoki Urasawa called Monster that I really enjoy as well. And it is about a doctor who's kind of presented with the dilemma of which patient do you save? The young child that technically came in first, or the older politician who's promised to give a major donation to the hospital, and your boss wants you to save him first because money, right? And the doctor ends up saving the kid. And then the kid grows up to be a serial killer. And so this doctor goes on this quest to like hunt him down and get him to stop and like figure out what went wrong in this kid's life to to help him stop. But yeah, it's a fascinating book. It's not based on any real story or anything like that. It's completely fictional, but still, if you like just these real slow burn stories, that would be one to check out. Not so much specific like serial killer stuff or necessarily slow burn, but I'd also recommend Gotham Central. This is a comic book written and drawn by a number of different people. And they kind of divided up by like the day shift and the night shift at the precinct. And yeah, it's about the cops in Gotham City and what it's like to be a cop when the world's greatest detective is this caped crusader that can often solve cases faster than they can. And there is the initial start of the book is that one of their own gets killed, and because it's personal, they want to solve this before Batman does. And so they're like, all right, we got 24 hours at the most before he swoops in and solves it in like 2. So we got to go now. How can we do all of that? But yeah, it's a great book if you like police procedurals and stuff like that. It's a book that very sparingly has Batman in it. I think in the 4 volumes of the book, he's in it for like maybe 2 or 3 pages, right? So it's actually like about the cops and stuff there. So good stuff. Yeah, I think those are some good recommendations. That's about all I can think of.
So
right now. For our next episode will be in October, which means spooky month. Spooky month is upon us. Melissa, I know you're going to be on vacation for this next week here, so you might be reading some of these comics on vacation or on the plane. Who knows?
Got them all downloaded.
Yeah, but these comics that we're going to be reading for next episode, we've had them on our mind for quite a while. We pitched them on the show a while back. They did not get picked, but we were like, let's circle back to these ones here. So we are going to be reading Paul Dini's run on Zatanna. Which you guys can get this on the DC Universe Infinite app if you have that. I believe it's on Hoopla. You guys can get it that way. I'm sure you can just go buy the book at your local comic book store, stuff like that. It's about 16, 17 issues. I think that's collected.
It's on the longer side, which is why it's been on our list for a while.
Yeah.
And why I suggested it for this time slot. I'm like, I will have time to read. Don't know how much I'll remember after I get back from vacation, but I will have read it.
Yeah.
We'll see.
And let me see. I know Paul Dini kind of came up writing Batman, the animated series. He was one of the writers there. I don't think the character was created by him, though. Who was he created by? I saw the name Gardner Fox closely by here. Where is it? Created by, yes, Gardner Fox and Murphy Anderson, first appearing in Hawkman #4 in November of 1964. But yeah, so we're going to be looking at Zatanna, who is in kind of the darker magic side of the DC universe. So not necessarily like horror, but more akin to that side of things here. So I'm looking forward to this. I've heard some good things about this book here. So cool. Well, that's what we'll be up to for our first Halloween week. Zatanna by Paul Dini. I'm excited. Yeah. Melissa, I hope you enjoy your little vacation over this next week.
Thank you.
Yeah. Where can the people find you on the internet, however?
Just send me an email. Not much of a social media person anymore. How do we even pick one? What do you do with it? Just send me an email at yourhostmelissa@gmail.com. Happy to chat.
Perfect. You guys can find me at Yo Kyle Springer, and if you would like to stay up to date with all of the things that we do here at the Whatnauts, we are at the Whatnauts Official on Threads. So please go like, share, and subscribe. That would help us out a ton. If you're watching this on YouTube, plenty more videos over there on that side of the screen. That would also help us out a bunch. This has been Shametember. This is number 302 of the Whatnauts review show. We will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.